Bud lives and works as a guest on Coast and Straits of Salish First Nations traditional territories in Victoria, British Columbia, which he keeps saying Victoria. He's a professor of community development in the School of Public Administration and founding director of the Office of Community-Based Research, which we're very familiar with here. He's the former Dean of Education there as well. Prior to that, Bud was at OASE as the Chair of Adult Education and Community Development at the University of Toronto for 15 years. For 15 years he was the Secretary General of the International Council for Adult Education. He's currently the Secretary General of the Global Alliance on Community-Based Research. So Bud is best known for his early work on participatory research and for work on learning and social movements, for his work on learning and global civil society that he's been writing about for 20, 30 years or somewhere. Most recently his work on community university research and engagement, and his kind of overall research over the years and his thinking has really centered around transformational learning, knowledge and action, framed through, with, and around and by civil society. So for me, you should know that Bud is at kind of the nexus of all of these networks that are trying to make change nationally and internationally. So Bud goes to SSHRC and asks for more money for people doing community-based research, but he also asks for more money for people who are doing community university research alliances in North and South. Bud works again at GACER, Global Alliance for Community-Based Research, and most recently, it hasn't been announced publicly yet, but Bud will be a UNESCO Chair in Community-Based Research and Social Responsibility in Higher Education. And importantly is he shares that chair. So it will be a joint chair with Rajesh Tandon of Priya in India. So the University of Victoria and Priya will be working together, particularly for this.
It's just great to come back to Guelph. I've got Glenn Filson here as a friend of mine from years ago, back in OASE days, back into that first job that you mentioned, International Council for Adult Education. I've had a relationship with Guelph going back to John Cairns, who was, I think, probably the first director of international development, Jim Shute, Glenn, Al Lozan, and a whole bunch of people in the early days. I used to always come down. Whenever I'd have an international visitor coming to visit us in Toronto, we'd make a pilgrimage and come down here to see what's going on at Guelph, because as your president said, Guelph has an extraordinary position in the history of Canadian higher education involvement internationally. The University of Guelph, through the work of Carrie, and Linda and their colleagues, and Shell Rose, when she was here before on community service learning, how Guelph is now, playing a renewed national and international leadership role in this whole area of engaged scholarship, engaged learning, and what some of us call the engaged university. So it's not surprising that this is a place where the notions of international development and engagement and so forth would come together. But I guess what was just wonderful to hear this morning, and I had a chance to chat with him last night, was to hear your president. He's the real deal. He's speaking from the heart. This idea, and you could tell from his stories about his opportunity to visit in the refugee camp. This is not the kind of a president that I'm used to. Who all the presidents are extremely articulate, and they make a very good case for their universities, and they can argue, in wherever they're supposed to argue for money or for, space or whatever. But this is a president for a variety of reasons who has come to a particular moment in his life where he really is passionate and he's speaking from the heart, and that's exciting. So this is I think that we should be aware as we gather here. This is not something that just happens every day in all universities. That this is a moment. I don't mean just this exact moment, but these couple of years, before, and the next, couple of years, and so forth. This is a really important, to use Linda's notion of transformative moment in higher education, and hallelujah that you're here, to kind of be part of it, to create it. And I love the, I think Carrie used that quote, or talked about the new audacity of education. Was that you, Carrie? And Alistair quoted from Walt Whitman, who's of course one of my favorite poets as well. And Walt Whitman, as you know, spent quite a bit of time in this part of Ontario, who talked about towards an unknown region, and the notion that universities should be the moral or social consciousness. And then Ken, right here, said that, but the grassroots people in the communities, they're not sitting around waiting for, all of us, no matter how bright and clever and committed we are, to sort of bring all the answers. They have issues, they're living the issues, and they want some partners who are going to collaborate respectfully with them. And thank you very much, Ken, for saying that. And I love the student panel where a better world is possible, a global immune system, students growing and exploring and getting credit for the experience, and that the local is global. And I love that thing, that statement. You don't have to leave home to be a global citizen. Isn't that beautiful? Yeah. So well, I should just sit down, keep on going, and let me know when you're done, and invite me back. And but you brought me here, paid my ticket, so I'll tell you some more stories. One of the things that so I've mentioned why I think this is an important moment here at the University of Guelph. The president spoke about some of the things about the world, the challenges in the world. One of the things I just like to mention, because it's an important underlying kind of factor in what is possible and what is not possible, and where civil society is or might be. And that's around this question of the growing awareness of the critical importance of inequality, income inequality, or the gap between the rich and the poor. There's a study which many of you will know, recently done 4 or 5 years now, by Wilkinson and Pickett, and they've written a terrific book. What's the name of their book now? Anybody remember that one? The Spirit Level, yes, I'm always forgetting the name. And what they've done is they've done a study, a statistical study. They've correlated using this correlation of a coefficient of income inequality, the so-called Gini coefficient, which is a number which calculates the gap between the rich and the poor in various countries. They've correlated that with a whole bunch of health and social outcomes, including things like infant mortality, but also including things like success in academic achievement, comparative tests, and obesity, and all kinds of things which you wouldn't on the surface think necessarily correlate with income inequality. And what they've discovered is that, and it's mapped out in these lovely graphs, which you, by the way, can download and use. They like you to use them as long as you say where you got the charts. That the determining factor in how well we do as a society, in the well-being of society, which means that we're doing better in these various health and income, social and health and economic outcomes, is in those parts of the world where the gap between the rich and the poor is narrower. So it doesn't matter that you may come from the United States, and where there's the biggest gross national product of any place around. But in fact, if you look at the health outcomes, and we know they're deteriorating quickly in the U.S., that they're way, way behind a lot of other countries that are so-called middle-level countries and so forth. And so the countries that are doing best are those ones which they may not, not everybody is, there aren't as many cajillionaires there, but the gap is narrower.